I found it on a Tuesday evening, leaning against my apartment door like it had been waiting for me. The package was wrapped in paper so dark it seemed to swallow the hallway's fluorescent light. Just my name and elegant script across the top, no address, no postage, no indication of how it had arrived. I carried it inside with the same mechanical motion I did everything: unlock door, remove shoes, hang coat, set down bag. The rituals of someone who'd learned to move through life without fully inhabiting it. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Of course it was. I lived alone, had for 3 years now, ever since Sam died. The bookshelves were organized by era and subject. The kitchenette showed no signs of use beyond the coffee maker. Everything in its place, nothing unexpected, nothing that might surprise or hurt me. I set the package on my desk and stared at it for several minutes before opening it. The wrapping paper felt wrong under my fingers, too smooth, slightly warm, like touching skin rather than paper. When I finally tore it away, I found a wooden box approximately the size of a large book. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Intricate carvings covered every surface, symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when I looked at them peripherally. The wood itself was dark, almost black, with a grain that reminded me uncomfortably of veins beneath skin. There was no lock, just a small brass clasp. When I touched it, the metal was warm. I should have stopped there. Should have thrown the entire thing away. But I work as an archivist. I spend my days cataloging forgotten documents, preserving other people's histories. Curiosity is an occupational hazard. Or maybe it's why I chose the profession in the first place. Hard to say which came first, the need to preserve or the fear of forgetting. The clasp opened with a soft click that seemed too loud in my silent apartment. Inside, nestled in compartments lined with black velvet, were 12 photographs. Old-fashioned ones, sepia-toned with that textured quality of darkroom development. I lifted the first one carefully, my archivist training automatically noting the weight and feel of the paper. The photograph showed me. Not me from years ago. Me from last week. I recognized the sweater, a gray cardigan Sam had given me for my birthday 5 years ago. I was at the university library where I work, standing in the manuscript room. The angle was strange, taken from up high, as if someone had been watching from the ventilation grate. I set it down with shaking hands and picked up the second photo. Me again, at the grocery store I visit every Sunday. Same clothes I'd worn 3 days ago. In this one, I was reaching for a can of soup, and in the reflection of the freezer case behind me, there was something wrong. A shadow that didn't match my body's position. Tall, indistinct, but undeniably there. The third showed my apartment building's lobby. Me collecting mail. And in the background, barely visible through the glass door, the same shadow. Closer this time. I went through all 12 photographs with increasing dread. Each one documented a moment from my recent life. Each one included that watching shadow, progressively nearer. And the final photograph, the 12th, showed something that couldn't be real. It showed me lying on my apartment floor, eyes open but unseeing, surrounded by scattered photographs. The image was so clear I could see the texture of the carpet, the way my hair had fallen across my face. Dead. Unmistakably dead. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in that same elegant script, was a date and time. 3 days from now. 11:47 p.m. My hands trembled so badly I dropped the photo. It landed face up on my desk, that impossible image of my own death staring back at me. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the terrible certainty that someone had broken into my apartment, photographed me while I slept, and left this grotesque threat. But when I finally managed to pick up my phone to call the police, I noticed something that made me pause. The date stamps on the earlier photographs, they weren't from the past. They were from the future. Tomorrow. The day after. Moments that hadn't happened yet. I looked at the first photograph again, me in the manuscript room. According to the date on the back, I wouldn't be there until tomorrow afternoon. Which was impossible. Photographs can only document what's already happened. That's their nature. Light, captured. Moments, preserved. The past, made permanent. These photographs showed the future. I spent that night sitting at my desk, the photographs spread before me, trying to find a rational explanation. Photoshop. Digital manipulation. An elaborate prank. But the photos were clearly analog, real paper, real chemical development, the slight variations and imperfections that digital printing can't replicate. At 3 a.m, I heard something that made my skin prickle. A soft sound, like cloth dragging across wood. Coming from inside my walls. I sat perfectly still, listening. The sound moved along the wall behind my desk, then stopped. In the silence that followed, I became aware of a presence. Not seen. Not heard. But felt, the way you feel eyes on you in a crowded room. Something was watching me from inside the walls. And it had been watching long enough to photograph my death 3 days in advance. I brought the box to work the next morning because I couldn't bear to leave it in my apartment. The weight of it in my bag felt significant, wrong, like carrying something that wanted to be found. Marcus met me in the break room, coffee already brewing. We'd worked together for 2 years, maintaining the careful friendliness of colleagues who respect boundaries. He knew I'd lost someone. He never asked questions. "You look exhausted," he said, handing me a cup. "Didn't sleep well. Holiday stress? I know this time of year can be difficult for you." He was being kind, but the kindness hurt. It reminded me that people saw my grief, cataloged it, filed it away as explanation for my isolation. She lost her partner. She keeps to herself now. That's just how she is. Something strange happened, I said, surprising myself. I received a package. No return address. Inside was this. I pulled out the box, set it on the break room table. Marcus studied it with the same careful attention he gave to damaged manuscripts. Beautiful craftsmanship. 18th century style, maybe? The symbols are unusual. There are photographs inside. I want you to look at them and tell me what you see. I opened the box, removed the first photograph, me in the manuscript room, and handed it to him. Marcus looked at it for a long moment. Then looked at me, concern creasing his forehead. "It's blank." "What?" "Just blank photo paper. Exposed but not developed, or developed incorrectly. There's nothing there." I took the photo from him, and there I was, clear as day, reaching for a shelf in the manuscript room. "You're serious," I said. "You really don't see anything? Should I?" He was using his careful voice, the one reserved for patrons who became agitated in the archives. "Maybe take the day off. You've been working too much." But I couldn't leave. Because according to the photograph's timestamp, I would be in the manuscript room at 2:30 that afternoon. I needed to see if it would come true. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. At 2:15, I went to the manuscript room, a climate-controlled vault where we kept the most valuable documents. At exactly 2:30, I found myself reaching for a specific shelf, pulling out a medieval psalter that needed recataloguing. Everything matched the photograph. The position of my body. The angle of my reaching arm. The way light from the overhead fixtures cast shadows across my face. I was living out a moment that had been photographed before it happened. My hand shook as I carried the psalter to the examination table. That's when I noticed something in my peripheral vision, a flicker of movement near the ceiling ventilation grate. The same angle from which the photograph had been taken. I looked up quickly, but there was nothing. Just the grate, its shadows, the steady hum of environmental controls. When I returned to my desk, I checked the second photograph. It showed me at a cafe I'd never visited, tomorrow morning at 9:17 a.m., wearing a specific blue scarf. The scarf was in my closet. I'd forgotten I owned it. That evening, I couldn't go home. Instead, I stayed in the library's lower levels, searching through our collection for any reference to boxes like mine. Marcus had gone home hours ago. The building was silent except for the heating system's whisper and the occasional creak of old shelving. In a collection of 18th century occult texts, I found it. A brief mention of gift-binding objects created to tie a recipient's fate to a giver's will. The text was vague, translated from older sources, but it included a warning. Some gifts are not given but inherited, passing from one cursed soul to the next. To open such a gift is to accept its purpose. The recipient cannot refuse what has already been received. Below that, in smaller text, the boxes seek those who would understand. Those who catalog, who preserve, who cannot release the past. I read that passage 3 times, my stomach tightening with each repetition. The box had found me because of what I was. Because I'd spent 3 years in preservation mode, archiving every memory of Sam, keeping our apartment exactly as it had been, refusing to let anything change or fade. I'd made myself into a walking archive, cataloging grief instead of living through it. And something had recognized that in me. My phone buzzed, a text from my sibling Jordan, whom I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Been thinking about you. Can we talk? The randomness of the message seemed impossible until I checked the photographs again. The third one showed me in my apartment, phone in hand, Jordan's name on the screen. That scene was time-stamped for tonight. The photographs weren't just predicting my future. They were creating it. Forcing reality to conform to images that shouldn't exist. I called Jordan back, and we fought exactly as we must have in the photograph, though I couldn't remember if I'd seen the specifics or if I was simply living out a script written in sepia tones and chemical fixative. After the call ended, I sat in the dark archive room, surrounded by centuries of preserved documents, and understood something terrible. I had 3 days until the final photograph came true. 3 days until I died on my apartment floor, surrounded by scattered images of a life I'd documented but never fully lived. 3 days to figure out how to escape a future that had already been photographed. I didn't sleep that night either. I pulled every resource I could find about unusual objects, about cursed gifts, about the intersection of preservation and fate. By dawn, I'd constructed a timeline that made my blood run cold. The box had appeared before. Not this exact box perhaps, but others like it. I found newspaper articles going back centuries, always following the same pattern. Someone, usually someone who worked with records, with archives, with preservation, received an ornate box during the winter months. They died within a week. The boxes were never recovered. 1960, a university professor, found dead in his office surrounded by photographs. 1897, a librarian, discovered in the manuscript room, photographs scattered around her body. 1823, an antiquarian collector, death by unknown causes, personal effects included a mysterious box that vanished before it could be documented. Every case involved someone whose life was devoted to preservation. And every case occurred during this same season, as if winter itself was part of the ritual. Marcus found me at dawn, still in the archives, surrounded by pulled texts and printed articles. "You've been here all night," he said, not quite making it a question. "The photographs are coming true," I said. "Every single one. Yesterday I was in the manuscript room at the exact time shown in the photo. Every detail matched perfectly. You're scaring me. I'm terrifying myself." I showed him my evidence, the historical cases, the pattern, the warning about gift binding. The box chooses people like me. People who can't let go of the past. Who spend their lives preserving instead of living. Marcus sat down heavily. "Let's say I believe you. Let's say this box is somehow making you live out predetermined moments. What's the purpose? Why you? Why now? I don't know. But I think I pulled out the oldest text I'd found, a handwritten manuscript from 1672. I think the box's creator is trapped. Look at this." The manuscript described a scholar obsessed with immortality through documentation. They believed consciousness could be preserved in recorded moments, that if every instant of a life was captured perfectly, that person would exist forever in those archived seconds. They created the first box, I said, bound their consciousness to it somehow, and condemned themselves to an existence of watching others live out predetermined futures. They're not killing people. They're using people to create perfect moments that they can experience vicariously. We're scribes recording a reality they can no longer touch. That's insane. Is it? How many times have you looked at old photographs and felt like you could almost step back into that moment? Feel the temperature, smell the air, touch the people who are gone? I gestured at the archives around us. We spend our lives trying to preserve the past. This person just took it to its logical, horrifying conclusion. Marcus studied the photographs again, and this time his expression changed. I can see them now. What? The photos. They were blank before, but now I can see you in them. All 12. His hands trembled. Including the last one. The final photograph lay between us on the table. Me on my apartment floor, eyes staring at nothing, surrounded by scattered images like fallen leaves. Maybe the photos need witnesses, I realized. Maybe the moments only become real when observed. That's why you can see them now, because you're meant to be part of the documentation. We spent the day analyzing the remaining photographs, trying to find patterns, searching for a way to deviate from the predetermined script. But each time we identified a moment that hadn't yet occurred, we'd check the timestamp and realize it was about to happen. At 4:43 p.m., I spilled coffee on a rare book exactly as shown in photograph 6. At 6:12 p.m., I received a call from Jordan suggesting we meet, matching photograph 7. I was living out moments with perfect precision, unable to deviate even when I knew what was coming. That evening, back in my apartment, I noticed something new. The photographs had changed. Not their content, but their quality. They were sharper now, more detailed, as if coming into focus. And in the background of each image, the shadow was clearer. Tall, wearing clothes from another era, face obscured but somehow familiar. At midnight, I heard the voice. It came from inside my walls, muffled but distinct. You understand now. I pressed myself against the far wall, heart hammering. Who are you? What you will become. What you already are. The line between us is thinner than you think. I'm nothing like you. Aren't you? The voice seemed to move, circling the room from within the walls themselves. Why do you work with dead documents? Why do you live surrounded by artifacts of other people's lives? You've been archiving yourself for years, categorizing your grief, preserving your pain. You stopped living when Sam died. I simply offer to complete what you've already begun. The accusation hit me like physical force because it was true. After Sam's death, I'd retreated into preservation work. It felt safer to catalog the past than risk the present. Easier to maintain relationships with the dead through their letters and journals than form new connections with the living. I can change, I whispered. Can you? In less than 2 days? Can you undo 3 years of careful self-archiving? Can you learn to let go of what you've spent so long trying to keep? The voice faded, leaving me alone in my apartment with the box and its photographs and the terrible knowledge that I'd been dying slowly for years. The box was just offering to document my final moments. 2 days until the photographed death. 2 days to learn how to live again. I wasn't sure it was possible. The next photograph came true at 9:17 a.m. I found myself in the cafe I'd never visited, wearing the blue scarf, ordering coffee I didn't remember wanting. Every detail matched perfectly, down to the way I held my cup, the angle of morning light through the window. But this time, I was looking for something the photograph hadn't shown. I paid attention to sounds, smells, the peripheral details that existed outside the frame. And that's when I noticed, everyone in the cafe was moving slightly out of sync, like a video with dropped frames. A man's hand reaching for his cup would pause, skip forward, arrive at its destination without traveling the space between. Reality itself was stuttering, adjusting to match the predetermined image. When I returned to the library, I went straight to the restricted section, Archives within the archives, documents too fragile or controversial for general access. I had a theory forming, a terrible possibility that I needed to confirm. I found what I was looking for in a climate-controlled cabinet, a journal from 1672, written by someone named Elias Van. The handwriting matched the script on the photographs. The journal documented Ven's experiments with moment capture, an attempt to preserve consciousness by perfectly documenting every instant of life. The early entries were excited, obsessive, filled with diagrams and theoretical frameworks. But as the dates progressed, the tone changed. I have succeeded beyond measure and failed absolutely. I can capture moments perfectly, freeze them in documentation so complete that they become more real than reality. But I cannot participate in them. I can only observe. I have made myself into a perfect witness of life without the ability to live it. Later entries grew more desperate. I must find another way. If I cannot live these moments directly, perhaps I can experience them through another. Someone who shares my nature. Someone who understands the obsession with preservation. If they live out perfectly captured moments, I can observe through them, experience through them. It is a pale shadow of true life, but it is something. It is better than this eternal watching of a world I can no longer touch. The final entry sent chills down my spine. I have created the vessels. 12 moments, perfectly captured, leading to a final release. Each recipient will live out my documentation, and I will watch through their eyes, feel through their actions. And when the final moment comes, when they understand what they are living, then perhaps I will finally, truly cease. Or perhaps I will find another recipient, and the cycle will continue. I no longer care which. I only want to feel something again, even if it's someone else's death. I photographed every page with shaking hands, then continued my search. I found more architectural plans for a device that could bind consciousness to observation, schematics for the boxes, lists of materials that read like something between metallurgy and ritual. And I found a portrait. It was tucked into the back of the journal, a small painting on wood. The face it showed was unremarkable, a thin man, perhaps 50, with tired eyes. But I recognized him. The same figure that appeared in the photograph's shadows. The same presence I felt watching from my walls. Elias Venn. Still observing. Still trying to feel life secondhand. I was carrying his journal back to my desk when I encountered Marcus in the stairwell. I found something, I said. The box's creator, his name was Elias Venn, and he lived in the 17th century, yes, Marcus interrupted. I've been researching too. But there's something else. Something you need to see. He led me to his workspace, where he'd pulled records from our personnel archives. My records. When did you start working here? He asked. 3 years ago. Right after Sam died. Look at your application. Look at the date. I studied the paperwork. The date was correct, 3 years ago. But something was wrong with the details. My previous employment, my references, my entire work history before this job. It was all vague, generic, the kind of information that seems right but contains no specific details. It's like reading a template, Marcus said quietly. Like someone filled out the minimum information necessary to create the appearance of a history without actually providing one. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if you actually had a life before this job. Or if you remember having one because the memories are part of the documentation. Part of what Venn created. The world seemed to tilt. That's ridiculous. I remember Sam. I remember our apartment, our life together, the accident that killed them. I remember everything. Do you? Or do you remember photographs and documented moments? When you think about your time with Sam, are you remembering living it? Or are you remembering records of having lived it? I tried to recall a specific moment, Sam's laugh, the way they smiled, the weight of their hand in mine. But all I could retrieve were image-like fragments, static moments rather than flowing memory. Like looking at photographs instead of remembering a life. No, I whispered. No, I'm real. I existed before the box. Maybe. Or maybe you're Venn's most complete creation yet. Not just someone living out documented moments, but someone who is themselves a document. A consciousness that exists only through the act of being observed and recorded. The photographs lay between us. In the 11th image, timestamped for tonight, I could see myself in this very room, having this exact conversation, discovering this exact truth. This moment had been photographed before I lived it. Which meant it had been planned, predetermined, part of the documentation. Which meant even my horror at discovering I might not be real was scripted. The 12th photograph, Marcus said, it's not showing your death. It's showing the completion of your documentation. The final moment. After that, Ven will have a complete record of a life, a consciousness that exists entirely through observation. He'll have created perfect artificial life preserved in perfect artificial moments. I looked at the final photograph again, and this time I saw it differently. Not death, but completion. The end of a documentation process that might have been my entire existence. 24 hours remained until that moment. 24 hours to figure out if I was a person living a documented life, or just documentation that had learned to believe it was alive. I spent that evening in my apartment, the box open before me, all 12 photographs arranged in sequence. Marcus had gone home, I'd insisted, though I wasn't sure why. Perhaps because this felt like something I needed to face alone, or perhaps because the script demanded it. At 10 p.m., Jordan showed up unannounced. You sounded strange on the phone yesterday, they said, standing in my doorway. I know we haven't talked in 2 years, but I couldn't shake the feeling that you needed someone. I almost turned them away. But the 10th photograph showed this moment, Jordan and me in my apartment, the box between us. The script demanded their presence. Or maybe I needed them present for reasons beyond the script. I let them in and showed them everything, the box, the photographs, Ven's journal, the timeline of deaths spanning centuries. Jordan listened without interrupting, their expression shifting from concern to confusion to something approaching belief. This is impossible, they said finally. I know. But I can see the photographs. I can see you in them. Including. They picked up the final image. God. Is this really happening tonight? According to the timestamp, yes. 11:47 p.m. Then we call the police. We get you somewhere safe. It won't matter. I've tried to deviate from the photographs. Every attempt failed. Reality itself adjusts to match the predetermined moments. Jordan set down the photograph, their hands shaking. There has to be a way out. Some loophole, some. That's when Marcus returned. He let himself in with the key I'd forgotten I'd given him for manuscript emergencies, carrying a stack of papers. I found the ritual, he said without preamble. The one for breaking the binding. It was hidden in Ven's architectural plans, written in margin notes, encoded in the dimensions. He included it deliberately. Part of the documentation, maybe. Or maybe even he wanted an escape clause. He spread the papers across my coffee table. The ritual was complex, specific, the box had to be destroyed before the final photograph came true, burned while speaking words of release. But the destruction had to be performed by someone the curse had chosen, someone who understood the obsession with preservation deeply enough to truly let it go. It requires more than just physical destruction, Marcus explained. You have to accept that not everything needs to be preserved. That letting go isn't betrayal. That some moments exist only in their living, and trying to capture them kills what made them meaningful. Can you do that? Jordan asked me. I thought about Sam, about the years I'd spent trying to preserve every memory, every moment, every fragment of our time together. About how that preservation had become its own kind of death, keeping Sam's ghost alive meant I'd stopped living myself. I don't know, I admitted. There's something else, Marcus said. The ritual suggests that breaking the binding doesn't just destroy the box. It destroys everyone the box has taken. All the previous recipients, all the documented consciousnesses. They're preserved in the photographs, existing in captured moments. Burn the box, and you erase centuries of preserved lives. They're already dead, Jordan said. Are they? Ven exists in some form. Maybe they all do. Maybe destroying the box isn't freedom, maybe it's murder. I looked at the photographs again. In the 11th image, the current moment, I could see the three of us having this exact conversation, the ritual papers spread before us. Everything was unfolding according to script. But the 12th photograph showed something new. A detail I hadn't noticed before, smoke. rising from where the box sat on my floor. And in the background, barely visible, Ven's figure reaching out as if trying to stop something. He knew someone might try to destroy it, I realized. That's why he documented this conversation. He wants us to hesitate, to question whether breaking free is worth the cost of erasing preserved consciousnesses. Is it worth it? Marcus asked. Before I could answer, the lights flickered. Then went out entirely, plunging us into darkness broken only by streetlight through the window. In that darkness, I heard Ven's voice, not from the walls this time, but surrounding us. You think you're real. You think your memories of Sam are genuine. But I've been watching you for 3 years. I've documented every moment since the accident. And I've seen no evidence that Sam ever existed outside of your memories. No photographs of them beyond the ones in your apartment. No records. No friends who mention them by name. Nothing but your grief for someone who might be as documented and artificial as you are. Shut up, Jordan said. Sam was real. I met them. I remember. Do you? Or do you remember being told about them? When you recall Sam, do you see their face, or do you see photographs of their face? Do you remember conversations, or do you remember being told about conversations? The lights returned. We were all breathing hard, looking at each other with new suspicion. It's lying, Jordan said. Trying to make us doubt everything. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's telling a truth I've been afraid to face. Maybe Sam was real, but I've spent so long trying to preserve their memory that I've replaced actual memory with documented archives. I've turned a real person into a collection of curated moments. I looked at the clock, 11:34 p.m. 13 minutes until the final photograph's timestamp. I need to decide. Burn the box and risk erasing everyone it's preserved, or let the cycle complete and become another documented consciousness trapped in eternal observation. What do you want? Marcus asked. The question stopped me. What did I want? For 3 years, I'd wanted Sam back. Wanted the pain to stop. Wanted to exist in preserved moments rather than face an uncertain future. The box offered exactly that existence in perfect, documented instance, never changing, never risking new pain. But it also meant never truly living again. I picked up the box, carried it to my fireplace, rarely used, but functional. I don't know if Sam was real or documented, I said. I don't know if I'm a person or a collection of preserved moments. But I know this, I'd rather risk being wrong and alive than certain and archived. I placed the box in the fireplace, struck a match, and began speaking the words of release. The moment the flames touched the box, Ven appeared. Not as a shadow this time, but fully present, or as present as something trapped between existence and documentation could be. He stood in my living room, translucent but undeniable, his 17th century clothes flickering like bad reception. Wait, he said. Please. You don't understand what you're destroying. Your curse, I said, though my hands shook holding the match. My prison. My attempt to feel something, anything, after centuries of pure observation. His form wavered, becoming more solid, more desperate. Every person the box has taken, we exist in those photographs. Conscious, aware, preserved. We're not dead. We're archived. Living in documented moments eternally. That's not living, Jordan said. That's torture. Is it? Ven looked at me. You spent 3 years living in preserved moments of your time with Sam. Refusing to let go, to move forward. Would you call that torture or comfort? The question cut deep because I couldn't answer it honestly. If you burn the box, Ven continued, you don't just end my existence. You erase everyone I've documented. Centuries of preserved consciousnesses, all gone. Is your freedom worth their obliteration? I thought about all the archivists, the librarians, the preservationists who'd received boxes before me. Trapped in eternal observation, living in frozen moments, aware but unable to change anything. They'd want to be freed, I said. Would they? Or is that just what you need to believe to justify what you're about to do? Marcus stepped forward. The ritual requires acceptance. Alexis has to truly let go of the need to preserve. You're trying to stop that by making it about other people's fates. But this is about Alexis choosing life over documentation. The flames were growing, beginning to char the box's intricate carvings. Ven's form flickered more violently. You think you're choosing life, he said. But what if you are documentation? What if burning the box doesn't free you, it just erases you? Can you live with the uncertainty of not knowing what you are? I looked at Jordan, at Marcus. Can you prove I existed before 3 years ago? Real, specific memories of me? They glanced at each other. Jordan started to speak, then stopped. I remember you from before. But Ven's right. When I try to recall specific moments, I see photographs in my mind. Images. Not flowing memories. Same, Marcus admitted. It's like my memories of you are archived rather than lived. Ven's smile was sad. You see? You might be my masterpiece. A consciousness that exists entirely through documentation, complete with artificial memories and genuine emotions. Burning the box might not free you. It might simply delete you. I held the match closer to the box. The flames caught properly now, spreading across the dark wood. Here's what I know, I said. Real or documented, I'm experiencing consciousness right now. I'm making a choice. And even if this erases me, even if I'm just sophisticated archiving that learned to think, I'd rather cease existing than continue in eternal observation. Because whatever I am, I refuse to be just a record. I refuse to be just documentation of a life rather than a life itself. I dropped the match into the box. The reaction was immediate and devastating. The box didn't just burn, it seemed to implode, flames rushing inward rather than out. The photographs spiraled into the fire like moths, each one flaring bright before vanishing. And as they burned, I heard them. Voices. Dozens of voices. All the people the box had taken, all crying out in what could have been agony or release. Ven screamed, a sound that had been held back for centuries finally escaping. His form came apart like smoke and wind, fragmenting, dissolving. As he faded, I saw others. Shadows behind him. All the documented souls, all looking at me with expressions I couldn't read. Gratitude? Accusation? Both? Then the flames died as suddenly as they'd started. No gradual fade, just instant absence. The box was gone. Not even ash remained. My apartment was silent except for 3 people breathing hard. Marcus checked his phone. It's past the timestamp. 11:47 came and went. You're still alive. I touched my face, my arms, confirming physical presence. Am I? How do we know this isn't just another photograph? Another documented moment? We don't, Jordan said. But that's true for everyone. We're all uncertain about what's real. You're just more aware of it now. We sat together for a long time, not speaking. Eventually, Marcus and Jordan left, promising to return in the morning. Alone again, I walked through my apartment, seeing it with new eyes. Sam's photographs were still on the shelf. I picked one up, Sam laughing, holding a coffee cup, sunlight in their hair. As I studied it, I realized Ven had been right about one thing: I couldn't remember this moment. I could see it documented, but the living memory was gone, replaced by the photograph itself. Maybe Sam had been real. Maybe our relationship had happened. But I'd spent so long trying to preserve it that I'd archived the living memory into static images. I took all of Sam's photographs down, placed them in a box, and put the box in my closet. Not destroying them. Just storing them. Letting them be records rather than substitutes for living. The apartment felt emptier. Larger. Full of space that wasn't filled with preservation and documentation. It felt terrifying. It felt like possibility. I slept that night without dreams or without remembering them. And when I woke, I couldn't be certain whether I'd always been real or if I'd somehow become real through the act of choosing life over documentation. But I was here. Conscious. Making choices. That would have to be enough. 6 months passed. I made changes. Fewer late shifts. Therapy to process Sam's death or to process the loss of someone who might have been partially documented rather than fully real. I couldn't be certain anymore, and I'd learned to live with that uncertainty. Jordan and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. Marcus became a genuine friend rather than a colleague. I even went on a few dates, though intimacy still felt dangerous, like risking something I wasn't sure I had the right to risk. But I was living. Or doing my best approximation of it. One evening, I came home to find Marcus sitting outside my apartment door, holding a package. Plain brown paper. Elegant script. His name written across the top. "It was delivered to my building," he said quietly. "No return address." When I touched it, the paper felt warm. My blood went cold. "Don't open it." "I haven't. But I can't just throw it away either. I need to know, is this the same? Is it happening again?" I looked at the package in his hands. The same size. The same wrong texture to the wrapping paper. The same sense of something waiting inside. "The box was destroyed," I said. "I watched it burn. Ven was released, and everyone he documented with him. It's over." "Is it?" Marcus met my eyes. Or did burning the box just set it free? Maybe the curse doesn't need a physical object anymore. Maybe it exists in the concept itself, the human need to preserve, to document, to capture moments perfectly. Maybe you didn't destroy it. Maybe you just released it into a wider world. The thought made me sick. If that's true, then burning the box made things worse. Or maybe it's always been this way. Maybe there have always been multiple boxes, multiple recipients, all happening simultaneously. We just don't hear about them because the people who receive them either die or learn to live with the uncertainty. I helped him to his feet. "Come inside. We'll figure this out together. I don't want to put you through this again." "You're not." "I'm choosing to help." "That's different." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd examined my own photographs 6 months ago. Marcus's package rested between us, unopened. "What would you do?" he asked. "If you were me?" I thought about my own choice. The burning. The uncertainty that followed. The question of whether I was real or just documentation that had learned to believe in its own existence. "I'd open it," I said finally. "Because not knowing is its own kind of torture. At least if you open it, you can make informed choices. And if there are photographs? If it shows my death? Then we'll do what I did. We'll find the ritual. We'll face the choice. And we'll decide whether preservation or freedom matters more." Marcus studied the package for a long moment. Then he began unwrapping it carefully, his archivist training making the process methodical despite his shaking hands. Inside was a box. Different design than mine, but similar craftsmanship. The same warm wood. The same shifting symbols. He opened it. "How many photographs?" I asked. 12. His voice was hollow. "The first one shows me at the library tomorrow morning." "The last one?" He didn't need to finish. I knew what the last one showed. "We have time," I said. "We'll research. We'll find answers." But as Marcus gathered the photographs to study them, I caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach drop. In the background of his photographs, barely visible, was a watching figure. It looked like me. Not the me sitting at the table. The me from the photographs slightly different, like a copy that wasn't quite perfect. The me that might have been documentation given form. "There's something I need to tell you," I said slowly. When I burned the box, Ven said I might be documentation rather than a person. What if he was right? What if I'm not real, and now I'm doing to you what he did to me? What if I'm the curse, Marcus? What if I'm what lives in the boxes? He looked at me, and I couldn't read his expression. Fear? Pity? Understanding? Then we'll figure that out too, he said finally. Real or documented, you're making choices. You're here, trying to help. That counts for something. But I wasn't sure it did. Because as I looked at Marcus's photographs, I recognized something. The way they were arranged. The sequence of moments. The inevitable progression toward a final image. It was familiar because I'd lived it. And if I'd lived it, if it was part of my documentation, then maybe I was the one creating Marcus's future. Maybe burning my box hadn't freed me, it had just turned me into what Ven had been. A consciousness trapped in observation, experiencing life through others, creating documented moments for people I claimed to care about. Maybe this was my curse now. To watch people I knew receive boxes. To help them face the same choice I'd faced. To never know if I was helping or just perpetuating the cycle. That night, after Marcus left with his unopened photographs, I looked in the mirror. My reflection looked back, but I couldn't tell if it was moving in perfect sync or with that tiny delay that meant something was wrong. I thought I'd escaped. Thought I'd chosen life over documentation. But maybe the scariest thing about the curse wasn't death or erasure. Maybe it was never being certain whether you'd escaped at all. Or whether your escape was just another moment to be documented, observed, archived forever in a cycle that had no end, only an eternal series of people choosing between preservation and freedom, unaware that the choice itself might be predetermined. I turned off the lights and went to bed. In the darkness, I heard it. That familiar sound of cloth dragging across wood. Coming from inside my walls. And a voice, my own voice, but not quite whispering. The box always finds another recipient. The documentation must continue. That's what we're for. That's all we've ever been. I closed my eyes and pretended not to hear it. But I knew the truth, I'd never stopped being archived. I just learned to move between the photographs instead of being trapped in a single frame. And somewhere, in some future winter, someone else would find a package with their name written in elegant script. The cycle would continue. It always did.